Hello and welcome to the Lads on Tour. I hope people can hear us. I hope it's working. You guys want to talk to me?
Yeah, we're here.
Oh, there we all are.
Yeah, we can hear you.
I am running this and hosting it, so bear with me here as I get everything situated.
It's
I'm
my
doing double
fault.
duty. I'm so sorry.
No,
my fault.
It's fine. Hey, you've done double duty before too. I think it's only fair.
Fucking hard.
But anyway,
I've done more than 2 duties in one day.
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
Well, I try to limit it to 1. I hear it's healthy. More than that, it's not good. Anyway, welcome to the Lads on Tours bi-weekly live show where 4 friends dig through their pile of shame and create a list to work through together. We play, watch, listen, read each item on the list and come together right here on twitch.tv/ladsontour to talk about our experiences. I am reading the same intro that Lucy made last week. Or 2 weeks ago, I guess.
Make sure you remove all instances of The Exorcist.
I think I did. But if I slip in The Exorcist in here, we all know
Also,
why.
watch out because her copy will have a lot of unnecessary U's. Those guys just put U's all over this fucking place.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
What's the language called?
English.
There you go.
Makes
Makes you think. Makes you think.
If you're watching live on twitch.tv/ladsontour, you can tell us what you think on the subject matter for the episode and throw questions our way, and we'll answer it as best we can. If you're not able to tune in live, don't worry. You can still check out the episode on youtube.com/ladsontour. There's no crew in that URL, but there is for twitter.com/ladsontour crew where you can follow us. And Twitch.
And Twitch.
It's copy and pasted from my intro. What the
Yeah, I was gonna
hell?
say you say that this is the intro I wrote. No, this is the intro that Tam wrote.
Ah, perfect. That's also a weird one too, right? Because everyone here is here live.
So, right.
Yeah, true.
You know?
Yeah, but unless if you're watching the VOD or if you're watching,
That's true.
if you're listening to the podcast.
That's true. Anyway, today is going to be a glorious day because we aren't talking about a movie, game, or TV show. No, this week is all about one of the most important albums of the 20th century, an album that redefined genres, one that was uniformly praised by fans and critics alike, and one of my favorite records of all time, OK Computer by Radiohead. This is going to be interesting.
I got to get this out of the way right now.
Do it.
We haven't talked to Tam about what he thinks about this album.
We haven't. And I'm
The
nervous.
album from Thom Yorke.
I'm very, very concerned that he doesn't like this record.
Oh, he doesn't.
Which is going to upset me so much. But also, Tam is the world's greatest troll, so there very well could be a chance that he's been putting on airs in this pre-production phase, and that we get into it, and he's like, actually, I fucking love this record. It's pretty great. So I'm really
Like a Tam impression?
I'm very nervous. Well, I didn't
sound
want
like a U.S. politician.
I didn't want to do a British accent for fear of offending the entire Kingdom of Britain. So
You do British accents all the time, though.
no, I fucking don't.
Anyway, the voices you're hearing right now is Zach Ryan,
Present and accounted for.
Lucy James, who enjoys a drink every now and then.
She spit
What
on
have you
the
heard?
here.
No, it's because this is my first coffee of the day, and when
No, that's a Radiohead
It's a
reference.
Radiohead
Radiohead
song.
reference.
Oh my god. Have you not listened to the music by Thom Yorke?
I have, but also I thought you were making a reference because I kept drinking my coffee, and I was like, this is my first one of the day, and I've just, when you just make a really good cup of coffee, and you're like, damn, I'm having a really nice time.
To be fair, I didn't give Zach his little nickname here that I have here, the
Which is
Gucci
why-
little piggy.
Gucci little piggy.
Gucci little piggy.
And then
You
we've got
are
a
an ass.
subterranean homesick alien, Tamoor Hussein.
I'm excited to talk about the works of Thom Yorke.
Thom Yorke.
Name literally any other member of Radiohead.
Yorke Thom.
Tam, you gotta hit him with like. I think if you're gonna do it, you gotta hit him with one of these like, Thom Yorke.
Okay.
Ooh, all right. And believe it or not, I am somehow hosting this thing, and I'm Jake Decker, a bug in the ground. I think mine's the least creative. I gave myself the most
I
boring.
like it.
I like it though.
I mean, I'm just happy you didn't give any one of us creep,
it's not on this record.
It's I mean, we got to keep it consistent.
And
Yeah.
but it's there.
I will give a quick shout out to my co-hosts and anybody in the chat. This is a warning and an apology. I'm about to be insufferable on this podcast, and I know it about myself in this episode. So apologies in advance.
Johnny Greenwood.
You
Good
look
work. Good work.
up. And his name, by the way, is Johnny Greenwood.
Okay, thank you. Colin Greenwood, his younger brother.
I have
I was just learning about the members of Radiohead.
Is it actually his younger brother?
Yes.
Let's fucking go. I got that. Ed O'Brien, his housemaid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Philip Selway, the man that brings him fresh bags of cat litter.
Okay.
Close enough. I've written down a brief history of OK Computer, but Zach, I know you're a big fan of this album as well. Do you want to give some background to this record before we get started?
Do we want to go around the room first and talk about our Radiohead experience, or do we
No.
want to do background first?
Oh, I skipped that. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was short. Yeah, we should talk about our Radiohead experience first. Well then, Zach,
Yeah, why don't we start
do
with
you
you?
want to start with your Radiohead experience?
Yeah. So I actually came to Radiohead pretty late. Radiohead was always a band that I was like sort of interested in and liked, the few songs that I heard on the radio. But by the time that I was like interested in checking them out, they had already put out so many records that I never felt like I knew where to start. And it was always a case of like, well, I don't know, like I want to get into them, but I don't really know what the deal is and like where to start with them and all this stuff. And then I had a friend, we were in a band together and we were driving to LA and he put on this record, OK Computer. And we listened to it from start to finish twice. And I was like, okay, I've actually, this is now one of my favorite bands of all time. And since then, obviously I've spent hours and hours and hours with Radiohead records. And I think they're one of the greatest and most important rock bands of all time. So
yeah, it's interesting you say you didn't know where to start with Radiohead, because I feel like a grave error that a lot of people make is they start with the wrong album, and that can be a lot. Like Kid A, for example, one of their most popular, but if you just jump into Kid A, it's something else.
Tough.
But Lucy may have jumped into Kid A because the way she's looking.
Yeah,
she's got
I
something to
did.
say.
I was like, ooh, I did jump in with Kid A. My experience with Radiohead is like, I listened to Kid A because my stepdad was a huge music fan, and he would frequently burning CDs for me. This like predates when we had Spotify. Like he would burn CDs for me, and he would burn like a wide variety of stuff that he just thought I would be interested in. And so he gave me Kid A, and then I downloaded, like, at this point I had iTunes and albums were expensive, but individual songs were like 79 pence. So I would download select songs. And so for my experience, my early Radiohead experience was not really album based. Other than Kid A, I downloaded, like, no surprises, I downloaded Creep, but I had the whole Kid A record. I've seen them live once. I saw them at Leeds Festival in 2009. But I've never really been a huge fan, like, to the extent that I am, I listen to a lot of Beck or Nine Inch Nails, even though Beck actually and Radiohead have a lot of crossover because they use the same producer, Nigel Godrich, on a lot of records. So they're also friends. I think they've toured together as well. But no, I kind of dip in and out. I like when I hear it. I also really enjoy. Obviously, Tam and I do Westworld coverage. There is a lot of Radiohead on Westworld, and I think it translates incredibly well to the arrangement that they did for that show.
That show's about paranoid androids.
Exactly correct.
Yeah.
Lucy also famously, one time when we were on vacation, told me to please put on something less depressing when we were listening to Radiohead, and I've never forgiven her for that. So,
well, I mean, no.
Another part of her sordid history with Radiohead.
Jacob McCourt said Radiohead Super Bowl halftime show went, and then Cam said the NFL wants people to have fun, not be deep in their feelings.
True.
So I
True.
feel vindicated. Also, hi guys.
That we should also say that if you're in the chat, if you're watching along with us, tell us what your experience was with Radiohead is, how you came to them, if you know their records, etc. So,
Mr. Tamlin in here says, I've always felt In Rainbows is one of the more accessible albums. It's the one that I always tell people to listen to.
that's a good one.
I think that's a good one. I think the reason why we kind of chose OK Computer was because of how monumental it was. But we have no idea what Tamoor thinks of this album. He's doing a lot of trolling out here, trying to throw us off. We think he's going to hate it. So it's like, I'm having second doubts. I'm having doubts on maybe suggesting OK Computer first, but I think it is probably the most important record of them to start with, I would say. But anyway, with that said, Tamoor, what's your Radiohead experience, if any?
I'm familiar with the music of Thom Yorke, mainly because I've known about Radiohead since I was young, because everyone goes on about how amazing Radiohead is and how specifically OK Computer and Kid A are supposed to be amazing. The song that I like of theirs most is Last Flowers. And that is, as far as I know, according to Jake anyway, a deep cut or like not a
B-side, right?
B-side. And it's primarily because of a movie called Confessions, which I really, really love. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So before, obviously, I through osmosis have heard Creep and No Surprises. That's what it's called, right? Because those are just like music that you absorb growing up on planet Earth, just because they're everywhere. But other than that, this is the first Thom Yorke and the Gang album that I've listened to start to finish.
Nice.
For me, it is kind of similar to Zach. Like, I remember hearing about Radiohead for a long time. I heard Creep. I enjoyed Creep, but I never really liked it that much. My cousin, one day I was over at his house and he gave me his like CD copies of Kid A and
Kiddy's
Amnesiac.
nuts.
Yeah, I mean, there you go. He gave me Kid A and Amnesiac, which I remember listening to and thinking, wow, this is depressing as fuck, and couldn't get super into it. And for a while, I just didn't listen to Radiohead much after that. I think what did it for me was, I think I was like in high school and a friend was like, you should listen to the song Just by Radiohead, which is off the Bends. And that was an album that I hadn't really listened to much. So I gave it a listen. I was like, I really like this song. And then I started listening to more of the Bends and I was like, yeah, this album's really good. And then one summer, I was looking for new music and I was like, you know what? I really like the Bends. I should listen to OK Computer. And the rest was history. I mean, I remember first listening to that song and it was just like, or that album, and it was incredible. Like, it was just a eye-opening experience. And then from then on, I've just been listening to Radiohead mostly nonstop, I would say.
I think, Jake, you're probably the biggest Radiohead fan that I know. Like, I think you and I have bonded over Radiohead on many occasions, but I have often in my talks about Radiohead with you have learned something new about them or have discovered like B-sides or, you know, something like via you. So yeah, I'd consider you in the S tier of Radiohead fans, but
I've done a lot. I've put my body on the line to see Radiohead, I would say.
What do you mean?
What does that mean? Are you selling your body for tickets?
Well, I went to see them at Outside Lands, I think 2017, 2016. I don't remember what year that was. And I wanted to be up front, which is difficult to do because they were at the end of the day. So I basically went to the front and was there all day. I didn't bring water because I didn't want to have to pee.
Oh no!
I brought like a little bit of food and it wasn't smart, but yeah, I
fucking Jake at the front of it, just looking like
was there all day. I will tell you, it was cool being that close to them, but it was not worth it. It was not worth it.
Yeah.
Did you not get like rammed against the barrier and stuff too, like all day?
No, not all day. I mean, it depends. Like the group before Radiohead was Air, which is good, but people aren't gonna be like.
Yeah, they're not
throwing their bodies around.
Whatever, yeah.
But what I will say is there is a certain group of people, I mean, this says a lot about myself probably, but there's a very specific group of people who do that all day and go to the front and hang out there. They are something else. One lady, like, had a picnic up there while people are trying to listen to music, and she was getting mad at people for standing on her picnic blanket. Anyone who'd, like, try to, like... Anyone who tried to sneak up, she'd just yell at them. She'd be like, "What are you doing? We've been waiting here all day," and like kick them out. And it's like, oh my god. So after that, I was like, no, I don't. I'm good seeing Radiohead from afar.
I mean, yeah, like as long as the acoustics are good. I mean, you see them in like a festival setting, they're not going to be as good as if you saw them in like a specialized venue anyway. But like as long as you can see and you've got a good view. I think that's fine.
But yeah, I mean that all the other times I've seen Radiohead were very normal experiences, at least in terms of.
How many times have you seen him?
I've seen him 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. I think 5 times.
Is that the band you've seen most?
No, I think I've seen Portugal the Man more actually.
I've seen them a bunch too.
It's because they were like touring nonstop for a couple years,
Yeah.
so I just would see them every time they were in town.
Yeah.
But the coolest time, I went to Lollapalooza in Germany to see them with a friend. I was just spur of the moment, like got a ticket and was like, yeah, I'll fly there. Went to Germany, spent a couple days there, saw them, flew back. Anyway, should we talk about the record itself? Okay, computer.
Yeah.
Yes, I would like to go last.
Okay. Well, Zach, do you want to give us a little bit of history?
Sure. So OK Computer released in 1997, Radiohead's third record, produced by Nigel Godrich, as we've discussed, who kind of became the
sixth member.
Yeah, kind of like the George Martin to Radiohead's Beatles. And it was the record that really sort of redefined Radiohead as a band, but also kind of redefined what modern rock and roll would be for years to come. I think the next record to do this was a few years later with The Strokes in 2001 when they put out Is This It? That's probably like the next record that really changed rock and roll. But the way that this album sort of predicted the future in both terms of its musicality and in terms of its like themes and honestly, this like lyrical content is really impressive, but the record came about because Radiohead had been touring nonstop for several years, and I think what's really funny about this album is that it was released. They were on hiatus through 1996 before they recorded this record, and they had just come off of a tour where they were opening for Alanis Morissette, which is fucking hilarious to me.
Ow.
But they basically toured nonstop off of the Benz, and the Benz was a record that nobody really anticipated for them because I think people had kind of seen Radiohead as, the UK's answer to Nirvana, right? Like British grunge rock. And they came out with this sort of post-grunge record with the Benz. There's like way more instrumentality, a lot more experimental stuff. And then this record continues that theme, but in a major way where they're experimenting with all these different kinds of sounds and, different way of composing things. And like for one song, I think it's Lucky. Johnny Greenwood conducted a 16-piece orchestra, right? Like there's so many different things going on with this record, and they recorded it over several weeks in 1996, at the end of 96 to put out in 1997. And Capitol, their label in the US, thought that the album was so weird that they downgraded the sales estimation to 500,000 copies, and then it released and sold millions upon millions of copies, one of the biggest selling rock records of the 90s and 2000s. But it became this sort of monumental thing where everybody looked at this record and said like, oh, this is kind of the future of rock and roll. Like they're doing so many crazy things on this album to sort of redefine what grunge music was and what shoegaze was. And, there's all these different influences from jazz and pop music and soul and like all these different influences coming together to create this album that's sort of singular, I think, in its experience, and still a record that to this day holds up so well. Like you could put out this record today and it would still sound modern, I think. But we're getting into a little bit of opinion here, so I'll try and stick to the notes. Is there anything that we didn't cover here?
Not that
No,
I can think of.
I think that's basically it. Yeah, in terms of the creation of the record. But
I think the themes are a pretty interesting interesting thing to bring up too, because one of the like post criticisms, I guess, with this game or this album, not so much criticism, but like how it how it kind of captures that sort of post 9/11 numbness that always kind of felt relevant, I guess, in a weird way. Like there's just a numbness to the whole album that so
I think it's definitely like their darkest record to this point, right? Like when they released it in '97, it's much darker than anything they've done before. Tom York, sorry,
Excuse me.
Tom York.
Yeah, there we go.
He's talked a lot about how he was sort of at a point in his life where he felt very disillusioned with things like the internet, right? Like this is when the internet started exploding and he felt very disconnected from people. He felt very disconnected from technology. He felt very like out of place and out of time. And this record explores a lot of those concepts at a time when people are starting to get this like pre-millennium disassociation, right? Like the country as a whole, both America and the UK, were really struggling with this idea of like, what will technology's impact be moving forward? And this whole album is about conformity and the sort of ubiquity of technology and what that does to people and cultures. And so in a weird way, this album has predicted a lot of people's, post-millennial feelings about the way we associate with technology and things like that. So there are some really interesting themes, I think, at work on this record. And I should also mention that they had taken a break from writing and they came back together to write. The first song on this track was, or the first track on this record they wrote was Lucky. And it was for a charity record that they were putting together. And they wrote this like really dark song about a plane crash for this charity record. And when they came away from that recording session, they decided that they were going to make a whole album in that vein. And that record became OK Computer.
I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know a lot of background about it.
Yeah.
At all. Like I've never really gone down the wiki hole for Radiohead. Like a lot of bands that I listen to, I will kind of go down and explore and stuff. Mm-hmm. The only big things that I know about Radiohead are through the lens of Nigel Godrich.
Yeah. F. Tongle in the chat says this is the Sons of Liberty of albums, and I
was about to say that. This is the MGS2 of
very
albums.
True. Yeah. I think that's actually very true. Suddenly Tam's like, this is actually my favorite record ever. Staying corrected.
Really underselling Sons of Liberty there.
In hell. Okay.
This is going to be an episode. That was a way better summary than what I had written down. So thank you, Zach.
Yeah.
Should we get into it then? Do we just want to start talking about what we think of this album? Tamoor said he wants to go last, but should we just make him go now?
I think you can't make me do anything.
I think we should make him go first.
I could just sit here awkwardly. I want to hear what you guys have to say.
We all could sit here awkwardly, though.
Yeah. You want me to go first?
It's up to you.
Okay, so I've listened to this album in the last week 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of the songs sound like the music that you hear at the end of an episode of Smallville, where 2 characters are looking at each other. Like Clark is looking at Lana as she leaves the coffee shop, and he's like, I want to shag her. And she looks back and she looks at him and goes, I want to shag him. But they don't shag until like 4 seasons later. But they do that longing look. In the background you hear,
Okay. I'm going to cut you off right there. I'm already going to cut you off right there. I want to say that I started a segment in the Runner Show called Tam Notes, where I was going to write some things down so that I could respond to them and just be like a measured response. You have just fucking torpedoed that, okay? You just absolutely torpedoed that plan for me.
What's going on?
I just the fact that you would compare these songs with that vibe and like the CW is fucking baffling to me. But please carry on. I'm sorry.
I really like this album.
Do you really?
Wait, what?
Yeah. I mean, like, if it's a fact, it sounds like that to me. Like,
yeah.
You prove me wrong. I will edit that together for you if you want to see it, because it sounds like every other fucking Lifehouse song ever. But I will say that is because it's a vibe, right? Like, it's a vibe that they capture. And I think the thing about the album to me is, I messaged Lucy this. I like listening to it. The moment I stop listening to it, I've forgotten it. and that's a problem I have with I think this genre of music. I'm the kind of person where, so I grew up a hip hop kid, I grew up a rap kid, but I have an appreciation for all kinds of music. Like I've listened to everything from blues to jazz to metal to everything. So it's not beyond me to enjoy like grunge, prog rock, whatever you want to call it. So I went into this. I think the thing that for me is when I listen to this kind of music, it needs to be attached to a moment or an event or a kind of something meaningful happening, so that it creates a kind of pathway in my brain to remember it, if you get what I mean. Like I listen to, like if I was watching, take for example an episode of Smallville, which is a show that I really loved, and the reason, a better example, the reason I love Last Flowers is because I listened to it while watching a movie and it really worked for me and it stood out in that moment and it stuck with me. So devoid of moments, I can't retain the songs themselves in my mind. There's nothing that's distinct. The songs in OK Computer that I really like are the songs that are so unlike anything else on that album that they kind of lodge themselves in my brain. My favorite song on this album is Fitter Happier, which is...
Oh, interesting.
Of course it is. Of fucking course it is.
I like, it's just because it is jarring. It's so different. And like,
Right.
And like it sounds like nothing. Like I said, the rest of the song is indistinguishable. The rest of the songs, in a lot of ways, are indistinguishable from each other for me. It sounds like, I think you need a certain kind of trained ear to really enjoy and understand the kind of impact of that music. And I also think that you kind of needed to be there when it came out to really appreciate it. Like it's kind of like, it's clearly this album is influential. But like I'm listening to it after I've listened to albums and music from all the artists that have been influenced. So when you reverse engineer it back to the original thing, it's not really. It doesn't feel unique to me and that's not the album's fault or the artist's fault. That's just life. It's the same way that if I show Akira to someone today, they've seen 10 different things that are directly referencing Akira, and they'll be like, okay, seems fine.
Sure.
If you get what I mean. So so music like or songs like Fitter Happier like stand out because they are like super different. I really like, there's a lot of songs on here that I really like. I think Exit Music for a Film is so good.
Mm-hmm.
I think the songs that are on this album that I really like are the ones that are least busy, like less like instrumentation like overlapping. And I feel like, I don't know, maybe it's the engineering or the production, but the vocals I find often like are competing with the music at times. Maybe I've tried listening to it on different headphones and I really struggled to hear what Thom Yorke was talking about the entire time. So like I went on Spotify and Genius and like read the lyrics while I was listening to this, and it was way better as an experience because he was doing, as I described, mouth half open singing, where it's like his like his vocals aren't super like clear, like as they are, because he's doing that kind of crooning, depressive, like I'm detached from the world and everything sucks, and like kind of like that vibe. A lot of it comes for me more from his vocals than it does from the instrumentation. Like the kind of like I can, the way I imagine him is like slouched over singing into a microphone that's like below him, like sitting on a stool, like just kind of just barely got his guitar on his lap and is like on the verge of just falling off the stool into the floor. And that's what like the image he puts out. Like he's got not he's obviously got energy, but the vibe is like, I've given up and this is in my last moments I'm gonna sing this album about how everything sucks and is gonna suck. And that kind of stuff is like makes it hard to hear when there's so much going on in the music itself. You know, the guitars, competing guitars, and there are things. The thing that I really like is when it's like the kind of pivot into like something intense. They have that moment, like slower songs that quickly, like very very quickly escalate into a lot of guitar, a lot of like, you know, background, like a rise in vocals and that kind of stuff, like an energy shot.
Exit
And
music for film does that too.
yeah, exactly, and that's why I really like those moments. But it also makes the kind of vocals really hard to listen to, and because of that, I feel like the message is quite. You have to fight to get it, and I spent the first couple times coming out of there being like, I don't really know what he's talking about in this album. But as I listened to it more and more, and I did it while reading the lyrics, it started to hit home, and the themes of it really hit home. So I really like Exit Music. I really like Karma Police.
Yeah.
There's a bounce to that song that really works with the also kind of what he's saying about it, the depressive tone, and like it's kind of like an upbeat downbeat song, like upbeat musically, downbeat like emotionally, like it is. And like the actual what he's talking about is this album, first of all, remarkably prescient about what's going on, like, or maybe not prescient, but like relatable and timeless. Definitely, like regardless of how I feel about it, I think it's timeless. Like thematically speaking, like the anti-capitalist nature and alienation and isolation and that kind of stuff, like it really works. And I think when I was listening to it, I like the imagery that in my mind came through was George Orwell's 1984, and like it felt really like that was the kind of vibe they were putting out. And then I read an interview where he was like, we wanted to make a musical version or musical kind of like inspiration, take musical inspiration from George Orwell's 1984, where like, you know, life and humanity and people are stripped away and everything is run on kind of, you know, by computers that are devoid of, you know, a soul. And that's what that feels like. And I was like, okay, so I clearly got the vibe that they were going for. The kind of, and I think that the reason I like Fitter Happier is perhaps the most like, it's the crystallized version of that, the kind of themes that it's going for, and it's like clearly delivered, and it's delivered in a way that is both. I think there's more power in it being delivered by a robotic voice than the voice of Thom Yorke. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just the enemy of the album telling you what it wants. If you get what I mean, the antagonist of the story telling you. And like I felt that was really powerful. I liked Karma Police and Electioneering. I'm just listening to it again so I can get a reminder to make sure. Electioneering is also a really good song. I really like that song. It's like almost poppy to a degree, and I realized why I like it is because it sounds like No One Knows.
Kind of. Yeah.
It's like when I started listening to it, it's like it sounds to me it sounded very similar. But I was like, wow, this is very similar to No One, and I love that song. So, and again, I love that song because I heard it and I liked it a lot because, you know, it's a great song. But then in a moment, that kind of like the thing that really like cemented it as one of my favorite songs ever is playing it in Guitar Hero. And like I said, my brain for this kind of music works by attaching moments. And I remember playing it in Guitar Hero and feeling like, this is amazing. This song is amazing. And the feeling that I'm getting out of playing it, super good. Obviously, No Surprises is a classic. And it's that kind of like stripped back song. And like, this is where I feel like with a simpler kind of background instrumentation, Thom Yorke's vocals and the kind of the mood that he's trying to portray, that kind of like detached, depressive quality, it really shines because he's not competing with the kind of like rock part of it. It's just like a very stripped back, and I feel like it becomes more emotionally resonant for me. And the funny thing is, like, I've heard that song many times before. I've never heard it within the context of the album, and it's such a powerful song within the context of that album. And I've got a new level of appreciation for it. And then I think The Tourist is another song that I really like because it is that, and I love that the album ends on the kind of Radiohead song that I clearly gravitate more towards, which is like, what I was talking about there, like somber, slower,
Right.
a little more kind of clear in terms of theme. I feel like the second half of the album works way better for me than the later half because I feel like there's more of the type of instrumentation that I like, and because of that, the messaging is clearer because Thom Yorke's vocals are a bit clearer, and like that part of the album works way better for me than the first half, where it just feels like that. We're gonna chuck this on the end of a Smallville episode kind of vibe that everyone has, like, and I appreciate that all of those bands that were popularized as CW bands are clearly inspired by this.
CW band. I'm begging you, please stop making that.
I'm saying they're inspired by this. Like, this is a vibe. Like,
Sure.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Like, this is the lineage in a lot of ways begins here.
Yeah.
I just wanted to address a couple things before you continue. A lot of people in chat are saying you may have preferred it if we started with something like Kid A.
Kid A or Amnesiac, yeah.
Or Amnesiac, because those albums are a little bit more experimental, and I think there isn't as much. Well, there are parts of Kid A that are very noisy, but it's very intentional to be noisy and chaotic, I would say. The other thing that I think is interesting and a really good point is how you bring up a lot of your favorite songs and albums are tied to specific memories, specific things that happen. And I think that's worth talking about a little because I think that's kind of true for everyone, right? And like you almost need, at least for me nowadays, I almost need unusual or different circumstances in order to really get attached to a new song. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I kind of like get where you're coming from, right? Like it's hard to just be like, with music especially, just sit down and be like, I'm gonna listen to this because everyone says it's really good and I'm gonna like it, because you're not. And like, especially with a band like Radiohead, I think it's really difficult to just decide you're gonna like Radiohead. Like I was saying, like it sounds super dumb to say, but like it was like a 3 or 4 year process for me before I actually started really enjoying Radiohead.
That's funny.
Yeah. But I do like thematically, and I think it's an incredible musical realization of the themes. And I think that's an important distinction to make from other ones, because other albums, because like albums can have themes, but usually they're just like spoken out, and kind of like very rarely does the music and the vocals come together to kind of represent the theme as elegantly as it's done here. Like I said, it doesn't always work for me. I don't hear the themes and I didn't identify the themes immediately. But once I identified them and like went back and listened from the start, it was way more impactful, and I could really appreciate the effort put into making every part of this album kind of coalesce to really drive home a mood, a vibe, a feeling. And I think that you can say a lot for it, because like I think that it's one of those albums where it can very easily, not easily, but it is capable of changing your mood. Like you can start listening to it like happy and like feeling good or optimistic, and then once you start listening to it, I feel like I went into these, like I listened to it once yesterday where I was just walking, and I was like, I had the serotonin of being out and in the sun and walking, and I felt good in that moment. And then I was walking and listening to it, and I could feel my mood change, and like I could feel myself starting to really like think about what he was saying and what they were saying, and I was starting to lament the place we were in, and thinking about how sad it is that the things that he's saying and kind of predicting or like just pointing out was true and it was happening. And the fact that I went from being okay and being an okay computer to like just being a depressed computer by the end of this walk and a listen to this album is like, that's pretty incredible, man. That's basically magic. Like that's insanely good that they can do that. Like it doesn't always, every part of the album doesn't work for me, but the fact that they can do that is not only a testament to how good the album is, but also like a incredibly powerful example of the power of music. Like it's super impressive.
Yeah, I think in particular, someone in here mentioned Wooly Gibbons' Climbing Up the Walls is a personal favorite. I really like that song as well, but what you're describing, I feel that, like, that's when I really feel the shift in this album, is when that song plays. Like, that song is so desperate and, like, terrifying, and, like, it's hard to listen to. And I definitely feel the emotions kind of just like change in me as that song goes through. Zach,
Yeah, I was gonna add, like, I love that I now have an album that isn't like, that is clearly, I can use. Everyone has these moments where they're just like, I feel shit and I just want to feel shit. Like, I want to carry on feeling shit, and I want someone to justify me feeling shit, because I don't want to feel bad about feeling shit as well. And I now have an album that I can, like, if I'm ever feeling depressed, I can just wallow in it with this album. Like, it's an album that is just crooning despair for, like, many songs after song after song, and it's, like, unashamedly, like, about being in your feelings and being depressed, and it justifies why you should be depressed, which is sometimes is as comforting as the idea of hope. Like, sometimes it's good to have a friend tell you, yeah, you should feel shit, man, or your feelings are justified, or your feelings, it's validation, right? And like, and this album, when you feel rough, or you feel like at a loss because of the world you're in, which is frequently happens, especially given the connection to, like, technology and the kind of control that it's talking about in capitalism and the political messages. Like, sometimes you need someone to tell you, like, the way you're feeling is justified and you're entitled to that feeling, and you should embrace those feelings. And you often, it's not easy to get that from people, but now that I have an album that's like, that's meaningful. That's pretty amazing that exists, and I understand why people love it now as much as they did back then.
Lucy, what about you? What are your thoughts on OK Computer?
So kind of, I'll have it on in the background just while we're talking, and it's like, it's one of those albums where it's like, this is an album. This is not a singles album, and it's kind of difficult for me because the way I listen to music has changed so much. I think, especially in the last 10 years or so. And so for this, like, going back and, like, listening to an album where there is a story, and, like, I agree with Tam. I think the second half of it is stronger than the first. Even though I love exit music, I prefer the swells, I guess, of the latter half of it, and it's, I don't know, it feels stronger, I don't know, like, towards the end of the record. But it's like, it was kind of nice. I wish that I didn't have to listen to it, like, while I was cooking or while I was just kind of going around the house. I wish I could have just, like, laid on my bed with a big pair of headphones on and just, like, listened to it all the way through, because that I feel like is what it demands. But it's still a great album, and I completely agree that it is timeless. It's not one that I personally would stick on if I was feeling sad, though. I think it kind of, if I wanted to be really sad, that's Morning Phase, that's Sea Change, that's, that's what I have those albums for. But, like, it's still a great one. And I love the instrumentation. I love how it all comes together. I do agree that Thomas could... It does feel like he mumbles.
Enunciate, my guy.
It does feel like he mumbles. But I think at the same time, he also has such an incredible range. Like, it's unbelievable, especially in something like No Surprises, just hearing how he can, like, his own voice is an instrument, and he can just go turn it into what he does turn it into. But I think as well, I think one of the things about it is that, like, I never, because I wasn't really familiar with Radiohead, especially in the late 90s when this record really took off. But it is like, you can see where it's inspired people, and you can see the amount of times that it's, like, been used in films and TV, and it does make those moments, it elevates them. Maria was saying in chat that, like, apparently Radiohead were due to do the Fight Club soundtrack, which I can't even think about how that would sound, it would either be like something really, really rocky or something just incredibly depressing. And I mean, both would work very well. But no, I really like it, but I don't think it's going to be an album that is going to be in my regular rotation. I think I have to be in such a specific mood, time, place to listen to it. Whereas, you know, songs like Exit Music, songs like No Surprises can fit in other playlists of mine very easy. Like I said, I'm a playlist person. A lot of it I don't feel like would fit in how I consume music.
Yeah,
but it's still a great record.
It's interesting that you bring up like this is not a singles record. Like it is very much you have to listen to the entire album. And for me personally, I remember not really doing that with music until I listened to this album, and then I was more like, oh, I should be listening. I mean, obviously, like Pink Floyd. Like I listened to a lot of Pink Floyd growing up, and like that was always like, yeah, you have to listen to the entire album. But like, I never really considered it beyond that until I listened to OK Computer, and then I started getting into Radiohead. And now, like, I very rarely just listen to a song now. Like I don't just pick out a song. It's always a record. I always listen to a record. Yeah. I would say that the only time I like kind of split things up is when I make a playlist. But other than that, like record. And I think that's another thing that draws me to Radiohead so much is that all their albums do tell stories. And like there is a sense of cohesion to them that like a lot of the songs by themselves, you just kind of like, they're still good and I'll still listen to, you know, Karma Police, but like there's like a sense of cohesion that I think is super important to the listening experience. And like just I know like Tamoor, you and I listened to that Dissect on like Kanye's Yeezus, which is like another similar thing where it's like these artists that try to create entire moods with an album and like stories with an album. I'm always drawn to so much more, which I think is why like Radiohead has just been such a constant for me over the years. But before I get too carried away though, Zach, you're a big fan of this record, but like
this is one of my favorite records of all time. Like you, Jake, I'm an album guy. And actually I wanted to point out, Snug Slacks in the chat said that this is a listen to all the songs kind of album, not just like put on one or two tracks. And like, that's what this is for me too. I listen to this album very regularly. Like I'll put this on at least once a month, if not more often. Like it's one of my favorite records of all time. I think it's one of the best and most important rock records of all time. I think the musicianship on display in this album is fucking insane. Like Radiohead really went from like a rock band to something much, much more than that in this record. And like, I personally put Radiohead like in the highest pantheons of music. Like it's like the Beatles and Radiohead and the Clash for me. You know what I mean? Like they're all right there. And this record is the one that did it for me. You know what I mean? Like I wanted to talk to 88 Kyles per hour in the chat said there's always felt like a gatekeeping from Radiohead fans. Like if you don't get this album, you don't appreciate music as well as us. And that got in the way for me with them before. And like, I totally get that. Like I fully recognize that like I'm an obnoxious Radiohead fan and I think that they can basically do no wrong. I don't like The King of Limbs. That's not an album that I've gone back to very often. But for by and large, I think that they are extremely good at what they do. And fortunately for us, what they do is they make really interesting, progressive, forward-thinking music. And this is this personification of that. Like this album is all of those things. And I don't think there's a bad song on the record. Like if you want a rock song, like Electioneering is there with such gnarly, like crunchy, warm guitar tones, and one of the best solos, like one of the best guitar solos of all time, I think is in that song. And if you want, you know, sad, emotional, you've got Exit Music for a Film. If you want to feel like you're wrapped up in a warm blanket, like sinking to the sea, like you've got Climbing Up the Walls, right? Like there's like, I don't know, there's just so many different feelings and moods on this album that all wrap together to create one specific feeling, one specific vibe. And I think it's rare that records have the power to do that. And without pontificating too much, like I think it's a perfect album, and I think it continues to be like a record that I will show to my kids, like a record that I hope that people, put out there as like, hey, this is an album that changed music forever. Like, yeah, I love this album unabashedly. I think it's perfect.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to belabor the point because you just said a lot of the things I was going to say, but I mean,
Yep.
I haven't really stopped listening to this album since I first listened to it, like in 2010 or whenever it was, and I still listen to it regularly. I do have very specific memories tied to this album that I think are part of the reason why I love this album so much. But even like as I've grown up, gotten older, and like still come back to it, like it not only transports me back to those times, but it also kind of keeps me grounded too, in a weird way that I don't fully know how to describe. Like it's almost like I can see a younger self my younger self when I listen to it, but I can also kind of see to the future, and like there's it's so hard to put into words. But yeah, this album, just to say the least, is very important to me, and it is, as Zach said, I think it is as close to a perfect album in my opinion, and it is one of my favorites, of all time. I think one thing that Zach did bring up was how the Radiohead fan base can be a little off-putting, and like that I totally get. As I was saying, when I saw them live, and like there was the group of people who like fought their way up front and were just kind of being like trying to one up each other with who's seen more concerts, who's seen which songs, and it's just like, all right, like yeah, they didn't make this music for you to stand in front and be like, here's my checklist of like all the things I've seen. It's stupid. I would ignore that if that's really what's putting you off of Radiohead. I think like listen to it at your own pace. If it's not for you, it's not for you. I think right. I think a lot of it just comes down to like where you are in life, and like what your tastes are, where you are, and I don't know. It sounds cheesy, but it is like magical in a sense.
Mm-hmm. Good record.
Good record.
Good record.
Do we have like personal favorite songs or least favorite songs or something that we wanted to, I know Tamoor, you kind of talked about it a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, like I think, I think Happier is, I don't know if it's my favorite. I think it's the song that I enjoy the most. Not enjoy, but like I appreciate the most in terms of the grand scheme of this album and how it, like I said, crystallizes what this album is about. I think if I had to like I've got a main playlist for all the songs that I really like to put in there, and Exit Music for a Film is the song that has so far moved from the Radiohead album to my main playlist. But I think there's a few others in there that I probably would put in there as well. Karma Police for sure, and Electioneering. Those two are probably my favorites. Downers, like I think Airbag is not a bad song. Like I think it's a great song, but it starts off and I'm into it, and then like midway through, it just kind of becomes a bit much for me. And like I said, like the worst song on this album for me is still an amazing song by most standards.
So glad that we continue being friends. You know.
I think Paranoid Android is great. I really like the quiet, like just straight line delivery in between the actual singing that you can't really hear until you notice it and then go out of your way to try and like figure out. Like I never heard it the first time, and then I like listened in close. I was like, yeah, someone's saying stuff here. I really like that. But I think those are the ones that I really like. But yeah, like I said, there's no bad songs on this album.
One thing I was gonna bring up too, both Lucy and Tam, you both mentioned how he can be kind of hard to understand, and he does his half mouth open thing. So I think it was for Fake Plastic Trees, that original recording. He performed Drunk on the Ground, so that's where his style came from, I guess. Being drunk on the ground and singing.
Roger, man, that's Thom Yorke.
Yeah.
What's he like?
Menace.
Thom Yorke.
Lucy, any like standout favorites? I know you also talked a little bit about it too, but any track in particular?
Exit music for me. Just I think of all the songs, maybe with no surprises in there as well, but I think Exit music does it a bit better. Like it takes you on a journey, and I think the way that it swells is like I think it's the song that for me immediately commands my attention and then like keeps me invested the whole way through. And like I said, like Tam said, you know, it's nice that when you have songs that latch onto moments, and it's like I've just heard it in so many other things as well, and so it kind of gives it a life outside of just this album. But yeah, the drums and the bass on it as well, when it just like it clicks, it changes, and I love it. So Exit music for me.
Yeah, that moment's so good.
It reminds me of Star Sailor's Way to Fall, which is a song on the Metal Gear Solid 3 soundtrack. It's the ending theme. It's the same, like it starts in this a very similar vibe, and then the progression is very similar as well, where by the end it's like a way more like aggressive upbeats, like aggressive, like kind of chaotic song. And yeah, I think that the reason why I like it is in part because it reminds me of Way to Fall.
Zach, how about you?
I mean, every song on this album is my favorite, but I think in particular I love Paranoid Android. Paranoid Android often gets compared to like Happiness is a Warm Gun by the Beatles, where it's multiple different songs kind of cobbled together to create one specific movement, and I really, really love that song. Like I said, Electioneering is just like a banger of a rock track. No Surprises feels to me like what I assume heroin feels like, just a warm sort of underwater kind of like, that song is incredible. But I wanted to specifically point out in the chat, Wooly Gibbon and Snug Slacks are talking about Colin Greenwood's bass playing on this album. And as a bass player, I would feel remiss if I didn't talk about how amazing the bass lines are on this record. And you can hear that probably most evidently in the very first track, Airbag, where he's got that and it's this like, he says here, the bass line is a lesson in hanging back, and he's so in the pocket on this whole record, but especially in that song. Like that was the thing that really clued me in the first time I heard it, where I was like, "Wow, what's he doing?" And then I came to find out later that he never finished the bass line for that. Like his plan was to come back and finish it and go back and re-record it, but by the time the album was getting near completion, he was like, "You know what? I really like the way that this sounds." And there's just this openness to that song, so that when the bass does come in, it punctuates so well, and it's so weird and like atypical. But yeah, those are my favorite tracks. And I also love The Tourist. The Tourist I would listen to any time of the day, anytime, anywhere, all the time. The Tourist.
I mean, with Paranoid Android, you had brought up like Happiness is a Warm Gun. I know that was originally multiple songs that they put into one, and they were thinking they'd just go with like a Bohemian Rhapsody sort of feel with the song, which you can kind of see. But I think it's hard not to say Paranoid Android is one of my favorites. I think just the journey you go on in that song and the way it sets up that world of the album. I mean, like, it's not the first track, but like, I'm just immediately brought into whatever kind of dystopian world that they have created with that record. And then I think, like I said, like Climbing Up the Walls is one that has like grown on me a ton over the years. I think it was one that I always liked, but when I saw them perform live, it was just like it like felt earth-shattering. It was so weird to witness that song live. It was just like, it was a whole different emotion, and like the passion in like that they on display when they played that song was just something else. And I think I've since then, like, that's always been a highlight for me. But yeah, I mean, it's really hard just picking a couple songs on this album. I think Lucky is really great too, which I don't think anyone's mentioned too much. Yeah, this is a great album. All right, should we move on to some of this trivia we've got here?
Ooh.
I've prepared some stuff. Exit music for a film was originally created for Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. It's a credit song.
Ooh.
I thought it got cut, but Zach left a note in here saying no, it's in the movie.
I recently in the last, I'd say it was in 2020. I watched Romeo and Juliet, and for some reason, maybe I had it in my head that song was supposed to be on the soundtrack, but I for some reason I thought it is over the end credits, but it might not be. I might be wrong.
I think it is. I think you're right, because I did look it up when you said that, and from what I can tell, I've only seen that movie once, and I didn't like it much. So
that movie kicks ass, actually.
Does it? Maybe I should watch it again. I saw it in high school, so
yeah, you should, dude.
Yeah, I done a wiki search. It says exit music for film was on the credits. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay.
The song that they.
But I do think you should watch that movie, Jake.
Okay, I'll give it another shot. The song that they did write for a movie that did get cut was Spectre. They wrote a song called Spectre for James Bond, and they didn't like it. I think that's the year they went with.
I don't know what the Broccoli estate was thinking getting Radiohead to write a James Bond song. They're not they're not a James Bond band. Yeah. Like, what are you doing?
But
they did go with Sam Smith.
Sam Smith, that's who it was. Yeah. The title of OK Computer was pulled from Douglas Adams' A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. The song Nude from 2007, 2007's In Rainbows was originally recorded during the OK Computer sessions, but never made it onto the album, which is a good segue into, I think, one of the more interesting fan theories with this album. Is that there's a fan theory that OK Computer and In Rainbows complement each other if you alternate the tracks for each album. So this is pretty neat. It's something that I did a couple years ago because I started hearing about this, but apparently I think you start with Airbag and then you alternate songs from each album one after the other, and together it creates like a different experience. Some of the songs like blend together really well. Like it does seem intentional. There's some songs that they just go right into each other, and it's super impressive. Others do not. So it's hard to say. I think Tom York has been asked about it. He's like, I don't know. Like,
I don't give a shit.
Yeah, sure, whatever you want. But if you are a fan of Radiohead and you haven't done that, I'm sure you can find you can make a playlist. I'm sure.
I was gonna say someone's guaranteed to have made that playlist.
Yeah, but it is the 0110 playlist, I think. But yeah, the album does sync up at times, which is pretty cool.
That's cool.
And then the song Lucky, which I mentioned, was recorded in 5 hours. And then a couple other things I didn't put in here. There were about 3 or 4 tracks that were recorded before. One of them, which I think Subterranean Homesick Alien. There's a couple songs that they recorded before their OK Computer sessions too, that did make it on the final track list. That's what I have pretty much for trivia. I don't know if there's anything else, Zach, that you might know of that I missed, because there's a lot that I just kind of skipped over.
There's a shitload of trivia about this record. There's a couple of really great explainers on YouTube that I really dig that points out a lot of interesting stuff about this album. I would say if anybody's interested in more OK Computer trivia, to just check out what's out there on YouTube.
Ooh, I know one that I just remembered. Apparently this album was recorded in a haunted house. Tom York said he was having a bunch of strange dreams when he was trying to sleep, and one day he woke up and just started cutting his hair, and he walked downstairs and everyone was like, what the fuck? So I think it was Philip Selway took him downstairs and shaved his head, and that's why during this era Tom York had like a shaved head in a lot of these videos.
It was recorded weirdly in Jane Seymour's house. Famous actress Jane Seymour, her mansion. She didn't live there, so they recorded it in a bunch of she had like a ballroom where they did a lot of recording. They recorded it in a lot of recording in stairwells. So that's why it has this really weird concrete sort of cold sound to it. But yeah,
that's so weird.
Yeah.
Anyway, with that said, what do we think? Does OK Computer, is that on our approved list of
1,000%?
Yeah, I think
1,000% for me. And Zach, Tamoor.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Okay.
Thumbs up.
How do you feel? How do you feel, Zach and Jake? Did you with my response to it.
I was legitimately nervous when we were getting into it today. Like, I was like, because you had texted me earlier in the week and said, "Oh, exit music for a film is a great track," and I was like, "Oh, good, he likes it." And then when we got on today, and anytime we were talking about how good the album was, and you were like making a face, I was like, "Fuck, I'm gonna be mad."
He didn't like the rest of it.
Like, Tam has already tested the limits of our friendship by talking so much shit about the Beatles. So I was like very concerned that we're gonna have a second hitch
situation.
Yeah.
I honestly believe you would like the music in Smallville though.
Oh, fuck off.
Make him a playlist. Make him a playlist. See what he says.
I won't listen to that shit. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it, Tamoor. I had a short discussion with him about it. He was like, "Yeah, I've been listening to it," and I was like, "Oh, nice." And you're like, I forgot exactly what you said, but you're like, "It's a mood," and I was like, "Oh no."
Oh no.
Yeah, right. I'm glad I ticked it off my stuff to listen, or stuff to experience before I die, because it is genuinely like a pretty amazing thing.
Do you think you will listen to more Radiohead, or do you think that was enough for you?
Question that I wanted to ask too.
So I think I want to listen to this album more, like this specific album a few more times, and really get comfortable with it, a bit more comfortable, and then I think I'm gonna move on to Kid A.
I think you'll like Kid A.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you'll like Kid A quite a bit.
Judging by how you feel about Fitter Happier, I think, yeah.
Okay.
If we get to the end of this year and Tamoor is like a #1 Radiohead fan, I'll be so pleased. Like, I'd just be
imagine that.
Yeah.
All right. Weekly recommendations. Then I guess we can move on, unless there's any last minute Radiohead stuff we want to get in here.
Nope.
No. All right. Zach, what do you recommend?
My recommendation, sticking with the music theme, I want to recommend an album from my youth. I just saw these lads last night, and they're still bringing the fire. And this might sound like a weird one to folks, but I'm recommending Thursday's 2001 album, Full Collapse. I think that this is probably the most perfect example of a post-hardcore record. Thursday kind of blends the melodic and sort of melancholy vibes of like the Smiths and the Cure with heavier, like genuine hardcore. And I'm not really into this kind of music anymore. I don't really listen to like a lot of like, I listened to a lot of metal and a lot of like screamo and stuff growing up, and I don't really listen to it anymore. But Full Collapse is a record that I still go back to pretty frequently. And even for as aggressive as it is, I think it's still a beautiful record, and just like a really dynamic and interesting and challenging album in a lot of ways. And seeing them last night, like, I was just like really impressed that these guys can still do what they do. And I was just reminded of like how great an album that album really is. And so as long as we're talking music, I want to recommend Thursday's Full Collapse. So
nice.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that out too. Lucy, how about you?
Well, also in keeping, I was gonna say Jackass Forever, which is a fantastic film, which we saw
I'm so
last
excited
weekend.
to watch it.
It's so good.
So much great stuff. Wow.
Yeah, but no, I was like, in keeping with the music theme, just because, well, Tam and I, we're gonna go see Nine Inch Nails later this year, and I wanted to recommend last year's album, my favorite album of last year, which is Halsey's "If I Can't Have Love, I Want Power," produced by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, which is, I won't tell a lie, which is the reason I picked it up. But honestly, it is a fucking incredible album. It is all about Halsey sort of reckoning with herself, her place in the world, and the fact that she is becoming a mother for the first time, and like how she's, preparing herself and how she's going to deal with questions that her kid might ask, and if she feels like she's going to be a good mother. And it's a really incredible album, and the song I'm Not a Woman, I'm a God is so powerful. Her vocals are incredible. It's also like a weird album. Like, it's a mashup of this like alternative pop, and it's a crime that didn't get recognized more in the Grammys. But it's a fantastic album. Fully recommend.
Didn't Halsey also really wanted to work with Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross for a long time, right? So it's kind of cool that that came to fruition. It was a good album. It was a very good
she
album.
basically like tried to ape their style a little bit on some of her older records, and then she like they're on the same label, and so wrote them an email and sent them a couple of songs, and then Trent and Atticus were like, well, we just finished doing Soul, you know, which they casually won an Oscar for, and then they were like, okay, we'll give it a go. And then there's a really good interview with three of them on the Nine Inch Nails YouTube channel where they talk about how the collaboration happened, and it's so funny because she's clearly geeking out the whole time. But it's great.
I have the vinyl of that record, but I can't show it on stream because
titties.
Because of boobs.
Titties.
Yeah. Tamoor.
I'm gonna. I forgot to fill that in, but I'm gonna stick with the musical theme and recommend an album that came out in March of 2021, but I've been kind of really digging again lately. It's When the Smoke Rises by Mustafa the Poet. I think he's goes under just Mustafa on Spotify, but you can just search for When the Smoke Rises. So Mustafa the Poet, aka Mustafa Ahmed, he's a Canadian guy. He's a poet by nature, spoken word poet, and he kind of originally became he's of Sudanese origin, and he became a kind of noteworthy when he did a kind of spoken word poetry recitation as part of like I think it was a Nelson Mandela Public Park School Festival or something like that, and it got a lot of attention. It was like in a documentary and stuff. And this is When the Smoke Rises is his first studio album, and he describes it as inner city folk music, and it's pretty incredible. Like it's very lo-fi, but not in the lo-fi hip hop beats kind of thing. It's like very simple, elegant instrumentation, soft sounds that like it is like soothing, but honestly, like this is the strength of a poet, especially you can see on this album. You could remove all the songs, all the music from the album and just listen to his words, and it's just captivating top to bottom as a person delivering his perspective and his experience. It's a album about a person who has lost people in his life to like gun crime and lives in a place where people are regularly throwing away their lives to protect patches of land that will give them nothing in return, and gangs and that kind of stuff. And it feels like this man's desperate struggle to try and tell his community that he cares about them and that they should care about themselves. And it is like pretty incredible top to bottom. Like I think the standout songs, like I think if you listen to the first song on the album, Still Alive, it's like such a powerful song, and like he's clearly a super talented singer, but he doesn't overextend at any point. This is his first studio album, so you could forgive him for trying to show off vocal range and show that he's an amazing singer to try and wow audiences, to be like, wow, this person's really talented. But no, it's not about that. He kind of takes a step back and he kind of reins that in and just goes for this earnestness and a somber tone to again, like Radiohead's OK Computer, like to deliver a mood, a feeling. And it is like, I'm sad that my friends are dying over nothing, and I wish that people would value their lives a bit more. And I think that's an incredible song as a first song. The standout song for me is The Hearse, which is it's about two minutes long, and it does this thing, like it pulls from modern kind of like hip hop rap production tropes. It's got the Drake voicemail sample thing where you play a voicemail from someone over the song, but it's just like a kind of melodic song that is like really sad. It's got a little bit of bravado in there, and it's also just a man clearly like struggling at the idea of losing his friends constantly. Mustafa the Poet's When Smoke Rises is pretty incredible.
I'm gonna have to listen to that. That sounds something up my alley. For me, ask everyone to keep with the music theme. Pusha T came out with a new single, which I'm enjoying quite a bit. So I'm looking forward to whatever new music he's working on. But if you like that kind of music, I'd check it out. I would say something maybe a little more relevant to the Radiohead conversation is if this is your first time listening to OK Computer and you're kind of confused where to go next, I would say In Rainbows is a good spot, unless you like the weirder stuff, and then go to Kid A.
I feel like that's the sequel to this record is In Rainbows.
Yeah, I think
I love that record too.
Either do In Rainbows or The Bends possibly, but I would say In Rainbows I think is
Jake, what's your favorite Radiohead album?
I don't know. It's such a hard question. I probably, man, yeah. I don't know. I think like
It's fine about it.
it's either In Rainbows or OK Computer. It's probably one of those two. But I also have such a huge appreciation for Amnesiac and Kid A. And, oh, I know what I was gonna recommend, and I know what I was gonna use for B-roll. The Kid A Amnesiac event, or the
thing.
Experience. Yeah.
I would definitely check that out, because that kind of forces you to really like listen to Radiohead, I would say. And there is a moment in that game which is probably one of the coolest things I've seen in a game. It is like I was like tearing up playing it, because it was.
I'm gonna do that.
incredible.
I'm gonna download that. I completely forgot that even came out.
Yeah,
Some Radiohead fan
you
I am.
should. You would really like it. I think if you don't want to sit through all of it, or maybe it's not your thing, at least go to the back of the pyramid and do what's behind there, because it is out of this world. It is so fucking cool.
Neat.
Highly recommend it. Anyway.
I would just like to thank Conrad Owens.
That is an incredible tweet. You guys haven't seen it yet, but he found a clip from Smallville where Lex Luthor is talking about Radiohead.
Hey.
To Clark Kent saying, hey, you should take Lana to the Radiohead concert, and if you do, I'll give you the tickets. And it's like, there we go. I was right. Who was right? Me. Thank you.
Unbelievable.
Radiohead, massive Smallville energy.
Fucking hell.
This was Tam's long game. This was the long game all along.
Unbelievable.
Talk about Smallville. Is anyone logged in to the account on Twitch so we can raid someone? Because I am not. And
Neither am I.
all right, I can't.
I mean, we can find someone to raid. Miranda's probably still on.
She's still
Yeah,
streaming.
Miranda's still on.
Yeah, Miranda's on. Havoc Rose.
Can one of you guys do the raid? Because I don't want to. I can't leave this Discord image.
Oh.
Oh.
I don't know if you can. It's
Yeah.
whoever has got it up. Yeah, you have to do it. It's fine. We'll figure this out for the next time.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll do it
Next time I'll log in sooner. All right. Well,
Speaking of next time, Jake,
what is
it's an
next time?
anime. It's Fooly Cooley.
Ready for
Oh
anime.
yeah.
Fooly
Get ready.
Cooley.
Cam's time to shine.
So yeah, next episode will be Fooly Cooley. That'll be in 2 weeks from now. I don't know what day in February that is. What, February 27th?
27.
February 27th at noon Pacific. So if you're listening to this right now or you're watching it on YouTube, listening to it on Spotify or whatever, you can tune in, check us out. While we're live, you can interact with us, leave questions, comments, whatever you like. Other than that, make sure to like this channel on Twitch. Make sure to follow, the Lads on Tour crew on Twitter. And subscribe to the channel on YouTube. I think we are going to try to have more stuff up there soon. I don't want to say exactly what it is quite yet, because there's still some moving parts. But it should be pretty cool. It should be exciting if we can get it going. I know a lot of people still ask me about this show today, and we were thinking maybe it might be cool to do something similar. But that's all I will say on that. Lucy, where can people find you on Twitch, Twitter, and what are you streaming this week, if anything?
I'm Lucy James Games on everything, and this week, Tuesday, 6 p.m. PT, we're going to be finishing Metal Gear Solid 2, it feels so weird to say we're finishing Metal Gear Solid 2, because I don't want it to end. But
You're about
till
to
you
go
get
into
to 3.
something even more better.
Yeah, 3
I'm so
is
excited.
More Metal Gear games.
I'm very
Based
excited.
on the amount of alerts you triggered in Metal Gear Solid 2, I am excited to see you basically always be in alert mode in Metal Gear Solid 3.
Oh, good.
We have a tough time. We have a tough time in 3. Yeah.
And remember, if you're trying not to kill anyone, in Metal Gear Solid 3, don't kill anyone on the mountain because a buzzard will eat them and that'll count as a kill, or knock them out on a mountain.
Yeah.
I will
She's
bear
not
that
doing
in
it.
mind.
Remember
I'll
that.
bear that. No, I'm just gonna kill everyone. It's fine.
She is literally like. So I started blasting.
Yeah.
I think for Metal Gear Solid 3, I think it's better to kill people in that game anyway. For
various
Zach,
reasons.
Zach,
I'm
same
at
questions.
Zacharias D. I'm at Zacharias D on Twitch and Twitter. You can follow me there for all my
Zacharias D's nuts.
Zacharias D's nuts. I'm currently streaming Tuesdays and Thursdays. I'm playing right now. I'm playing Deedlit in Wonder Labyrinth, which is basically Castlevania Symphony of the Night 2. And Saturday mornings I do Saturday morning hard mode, and we're playing God of War in hard mode right now, and I'm about 2/3 of the way through that. So tune in. I don't know why I did double finger guns. I feel bad about doing that.
You want to do it again?
Really off-brand. No, I did it multiple times. So
You just want to do it one more time? I full screened you. There we go. Thank you.
you got it.
Tamoor.
I'm Tamoor H on Twitter and Twitch. I stream Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Currently doing Cuphead. My streams have been consistent since I started until recently, when work has started to become a bit unpredictable and overwhelming. So I plan to stream Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. But if for some reason I decide I need to bounce one stream, I'll let you know on Twitter.
Just quit.
No, I will. You'll never make me quit. My bad takes have to go somewhere. And it's
I meant work, but yeah.
Oh, okay.
You can find me at Jacob Deck on pretty much anything. I will be streaming probably Smash Bros tomorrow, but I might do some Pokemon because I'm still trying to get all the Pokemon in the Arceus Pokedex. Or I may just sleep in tomorrow and not stream. Who knows?
Wow.
Live your best life.
Yeah. 7 a.m. streams are tough.
That is tough.
No.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you all for watching, tuning in.
Thank you. Everyone in the chat, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, chat.
We will see y'all in a couple weeks.
Bye.
Bye.